This is Bad Movies We Love, part of the Shice Podcast Network.
If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Hello, Bad Movie Lovers, and welcome back to Bad Movies We Love, where we're celebrating Women's Month here in March. As always, I am your host, Nick Scheist.
The master of this stupid stuff!
At the beginning of the show, when you hear those words, if you're listening to this, you are the resistance. It's not just the line from Terminator Salvation. I use it as the mantra for this show to be the North Star for a different kind of movie discussion. So just know that when you push play on an episode and you hear those words, I do actually mean it, and I'm appreciative of you being here and being part of what we're trying to do at Bad Movies We Love. And this show recently got featured in Podranker's Best B-Movie Podcast of 2026, coming in at number 8 in the top 25. And for some context, How Did This Get Made is the number 1 show on that list. So being number 8 says a lot about what we've accomplished as an independent podcast with no celebrity. And we're not done yet. For today's episode, I was joined by Raph from the Canon podcast to talk about McGee's Charlie's Angels from 2000. Oh yeah, this is a vibes movie all day long.
This is also one of the most MTV movies that we've ever seen.
By my count, there are 39 songs on this soundtrack.
Everything is awesome. Everything is rad. Things are going to be like this forever.
Everything blows up in this movie, and it's kind of awesome.
It is ostensibly like a girl power movie, but it's directed by a dude.
I don't like the lines. Can I not say that?
Yeah, it's nice that the movie's aware that it doesn't need to be taken that seriously.
Sort of like, okay, I look stupid, but I'm having a good time.
Good morning, angels.
Good morning, Charlie.
Dylan, Alex, Natalie, I hope you're rested and ready for your next assignment. Meet Eric Knox, a brilliant engineer and the founder of Knox Technologies, an up-and-coming communication software company. Last night, Knox was kidnapped, and his voice identification software was stolen.
Who's the lady left behind?
Vivian Ward. She's the president of Knox Technologies.
Oh, she did it.
Well, I guess we can all go home then.
Angels, meet Vivian Wood, our new client.
Oh, we're going to have fun today. Raph, welcome back to the show, man.
Thanks for having me back. Excited to be here.
You're always welcome here, and I'm glad that this was a movie that you were willing to pick up, because, I don't know, I've kind of been like overbooking. I'm just like, anybody that's interested, let me know. And then I'm like, yeah, usually people fall out. And now it's like, oh, people are not falling out. And so now I've got a lot of work to do, but that's okay. I'd rather have more work to do and try to fit it all than to not have it. So I appreciate you picking up this movie. You've been here a couple times, but I don't think in either of those times I asked you what I'm going to ask you, because it's a newer question. But since you've been here before and didn't enlighten us, what is your first memory of watching a bad movie and enjoying it, but knowing that it's bad?
Oof. I guess it depends on how we define a bad movie. Like, this won't include movies that I saw as a child that are movies for children that are seen as kind of bad, but we know that they're going to be bad because they're kids' movies. We're talking about a real so bad it's good kind of viewing as a middle schooler, teenager kind of vibe. Is that what we're going for?
Yeah, something like that. The first time we were like, wow, this is crap, but I'm having fun.
The first time I was thinking this is crap, but I'm having fun. I honestly don't know that I can fully recognize what that moment was. It's kind of like Billy Madison, maybe, but
Okay.
I love Billy Madison. That's probably something that's seen as a bad movie by critics, but fans love it because it's funny. I'm trying to think if there's like a movie that like my buddies and I saw in the theaters that was bad. Nick, I don't know that I have an answer for you. I might need to stew on this one for a little bit.
Okay. Well, next time you're back on the show, I'll ask you the same question. Hopefully,
You stumped me. You really stumped me.
I mean, Billy Madison, I think, is close, but it might be like too close to being a good movie because it's coming from that era of Adam Sandler where a lot of people are enjoying his stuff anyway. So it doesn't feel that far outside of the
Yeah.
realm of the good Sandler stuff. And I really like Billy Madison, so who knows? I have Billy Madison
It's probably
nightmares
top
where
tier Sandler.
yeah, I think so. I mean, at least like for that era of his comedy. But every now and then I will have some weird nightmare where I'm like back in grade school and there was like one test that I didn't finish in 7th grade that I need to ace and I don't remember my locker combination. And I'm like, why am I having this dream? This sucks. I didn't even watch Billy Madison recently.
Yeah. I think everyone has had that dream. We all have it. There's one test you didn't take. Like,
Yeah.
why am I 35 and worried about a middle school geometry test right now?
Yeah, I mean, need to psychoanalyze that. That's for therapy and not for the show. uh, but it's funny that you brought that up because every time it happens, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a Billy Madison kind of situation going on, but not in an enjoyable way. It's not fun like the movie is. But we're not here to talk about that movie. We're here to talk about Charlie's Angels from 2000, not the remake or the reboot, I guess, of Charlie's Angels that just happened fairly recently ish. I mean, I guess in comparison to 2000, that was a 2019 film. So
When's it from?
2019, the one with Kristen Stewart and Elizabeth Banks. That one I have not seen.
I don't think I knew that existed.
Yeah, it kind of came and went with like very little fanfare. I mean, it would probably be included on this show, just about the same. I think it's weird that, this movie that we're talking about today is a remake or at least an adaptation of the television show. And it was kind of met at the time with that sentiment of like, oh, this is just another, reboot of a TV show. And we see the joke sort of made inside the movie in the first 5 minutes with LL Cool J in the airplane looking at the TJ Hooker ad on the TV. So to then, spend another 15 to 16 years after the sequel to the 2000 film and then basically like reboot it again, I think it's just like a copy of a copy of a copy just kind of like begins to degrade naturally. But it's like I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know if it's actually good, but it was met with probably more criticism and more negativity than the film that we're watching now. And I like Kristen Stewart, and I don't think that she would be bad, so I sort of need to maybe give this one a chance. It's got Patrick Stewart in it also, Ella Balinska and Naomi Scott, so it's got a solid cast. I would give it a shot, cool. I think, after watching this. And then it'd be funny if I did both of these movies in the same month, but I was like, no, there's only room for one, and I think I got to go with the one that's more specifically for my generation. But do you remember when you first saw Charlie's Angels? Do you remember the time when this came out?
So I didn't see this in theaters, and I actually may not have seen it until I watched it for this, or at least seen it all the way through. I maybe caught glimpses of it, a scene here or there on TV. This was probably running on VH1 or MTV in the early 2000s at some point. So I probably caught some of it there. But for, watching it for this specific conversation was like probably the first time that I actually sat down and watched it all the way through. So I don't remember my earliest experiences with this movie. I always remember it kind of existing in the zeitgeist, but it was never something that I was, watching on my own as a 10-year-old boy.
That's fair. I mean, I guess I'm a little bit older than you, so this was like cable era TV, big time. So I didn't see it until it hit cable maybe 2 years after it was in theaters, and so I always had a lot of fun with it. Though it was never something that I sought out because I wasn't familiar with the TV show, so there was no pull for me to go see this adaptation of a thing that I didn't really know what the thing was. I had an idea, but I'd never seen an episode of the TV show. So there was no sort of like inherent interest in it. And I remember it being kind of a big deal at the time that it came out, primarily for the reason that it's kind of coming on the heels of the popularity of like a renewed interest in both Mission Impossible and James Bond. And so like all of a sudden spy culture is kind of back, and it's an adaptation of a TV show that was popular like Mission Impossible was. So we're all of a sudden like reinvigorating stuff from the 60s and 70s into mainstream culture. And I mean, the cast obviously was a big deal. Cameron Diaz being part of it was massive. So I remember kind of like the promotional era around it. And the first time I saw it, I really liked it a lot. It had been so long since I've seen it. Some of the details fell through the cracks. And I was like, I think Sam Rockwell's in the second one, but it's this one that he's in. So I was like, well, that's a pleasant surprise because he's great. And so I know that the two different thoughts I'm having will sort of align at some point. It's like I was very focused on my memory of Crispin Glover and his character portrayal in this with the silence and the smelling of the hair and the screaming. And he stood out as such a sort of memorable villain in a way that it's not that Sam Rockwell doesn't, but it's like he's really only got one good scene as the villain, where Crispin Glover gets to do that kind of the entire time throughout the film. And it was still a lot of fun to look back on and to see that it's sort of, it's post Matrix as well, and it's right after 1999 where it's like, well, we're going to take a bunch of shots because we don't know if Y2K is going to end the world. And then the fallout of that and seeing stuff like this kind of like, oh, well, now the world isn't ending, so we get to like have some fun again. I think this is sort of like a byproduct of that era.
Oh, 1000%. I think you summed it up perfectly. You hit all of the notes that I was going to try to get to at some point throughout this conversation, throughout this episode. But I had a ton of fun with this. I understand why it's seen as a bad movie, and we'll obviously get into that. But I think in terms of trying to succeeding in accomplishing what it is setting out to do, I think that this movie's a smash hit in that regard. But yeah, it totally feels like of a time and place, a very post Mission Impossible, post Matrix kind of movie in a lot of ways. And it really, really, really works. Like the one thing that I would add is that this is also one of the most MTV movies that we've ever seen. Like it feels like TRL in an hour and 45 minutes long action movie. So it's pre 9/11. So like we have the like, it's in that cool window post 1999 where we were all like, Y2K is going to ruin everything, and pre fallout from 9/11 where we were like, oh my God, everything is actually ruined because of this horrific event. There was like a sweet spot in 2000 and early 2001 before we got there. And this movie is right smack in the middle of that. Just like everything is awesome. Everything is rad. Things are going to be like this forever. And obviously we know it wasn't, but
the world didn't end. Hooray. And then, oh God damn it. Like right back into shit.
Yeah, maybe it is ending. Yeah. So there was like a 14-month period in the middle of that where everything was awesome and rad before It
Yeah,
wasn't.
and the more I've done the show, the more I've gotten into stuff that's happening in the early to mid 2000s, like before 2010. And I guess like up until recently, I never really thought of what it was like to try to make a movie in sort of like the post Y2K space or in the post 9/11 space. And all of a sudden, like now that I'm talking about these films, like you can sort of see what was going on at the time. Not necessarily like with the movies being overtly political, but with the films and the sort of stylistic choices. And like it was something I didn't expect to talk about in the first episode of the month where I was talking about Devs, which is about like a spy school. And we got into this
Mhm.
like conversation about like who is this movie for? Because it was almost rated R. All the girls are adults. They're in college, but they're dressed like Catholic schoolgirls, but then they're also like Charlie's Angels. And so it kind of was like this weird moment of counterculture in 2004. And
Mhm.
it's like that's while the other war in Iraq was going on at the time. So that sort of like weighs over a lot of this stuff in a way that I didn't think. And like even when we talked about Tokyo Drift, like we talked a lot about like the geopolitical landscape of that movie at the time. And so I think it's going to be a lot more interesting moving forward when I'm looking at these movies that are now like Charlie's Angels, 26 years old. So stuff that's in that 20-year-old range is going to be going through a lot of this kind of reappraisal territory. And I did read some articles about it that I will also pin into the show notes for people that are curious. But I think it's a good time right now to crack open the film file and take a look at the details.
Hell yeah.
So this is directed by McG, who I guess as a music video director, you just earn the nickname of McG. And I think this is his first actual feature. And what I remember him most from is Terminator Salvation, which I still think is a solid Terminator movie. I don't dislike any of the Terminator movies, though, so that might just be a me thing. But I also just am very fascinated by that world. And I think given the fact that, AI destroying the world in one way or another is tied to that franchise, kind of will just always resonate with me. It hasn't gone out of style, I'll say that. But this movie was written by Ryan Rowe and Ed Solomon and John August, based, of course, on the TV show written by Ivan Goff and Ben Roberts. Stars Cameron Diaz, Drew Barrymore, Lucy Liu, and Bill Murray, but also featuring Sam Rockwell, Kelly Lynch, Tim Curry, Crispin Glover, Matt LeBlanc, LL Cool J, Tom Green, Luke Wilson, and Sean Whalen. Music by Edward Shermer, cinematography by Russell Carpenter, editing by Peter Teschner and Wayne Warma, production design by J. Michael Riva, set decoration by Lori Gaffin, and costumes by Joseph G. Alizi. Quite an interesting production team. When you mentioned this is sort of like the most MTV kind of movie, like the needle drops, super heavy, right? Like you can't go 30 seconds without a needle drop in this movie. And I mean, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. It certainly speaks to the era of like silence is not allowed on screen, right? There always has to be something going on. And given that this is McG, who's coming from a extensive music video background at this point, I think it kind of makes sense to incorporate music as part of the storytelling language. And a lot of the 2000s era's films are like super heavy on needle drops. And I think there's two minds of this, of do you decide to really invest heavily in the music licensing so that you have these iconic moments in the film, or do you pare back on that and select stuff that was being listened to but wasn't stuff that's like instantly recognizable, like music that fits the vibe that you're looking for, music that's good, but music that isn't like as soon as you hear the first like few beats of the song, you're okay, I know what this is. And there's a lot of slow-mo in this movie too that's paired with those needle drops. So I mean, for you, are the needle drops a good thing or a bad thing?
So I kind of dig the needle drops. Also, understanding who this director is, where he's coming from what kind of audience this movie is looking to attract, right? Like if we're thinking of this movie being for the MTV era of teens, of millennials, and maybe some younger Gen X folks, these are all songs that they love. There's like everything from pop to some old school things to like industrial rock to, you know, some indie rock. Like there's just everything. There might be even like one or two hip hop tracks. There's some like more dancey stuff. And if you're also thinking about this movie in terms of, you know, when it was released, who it's released for, those MTV teens, they're going out and they're buying CDs at the mall. And if you give them a movie soundtrack that had a bunch of needle drops from songs that they love seeing and music videos that they love watching on TRL every day, they are going to go out and buy those CDs. They're going to, and now I'm blanking on the names of all the CD stores, but they're going to
Sam Goody.
They're going to those places. Yeah, they're going to Sam Goody, and they're buying the Charlie's Angels soundtrack to then listen to at home, because a pre-music streaming era. So people aren't making a Charlie's Angels playlist on Spotify or whatever. They have to buy the CD if they want to listen to those songs. So it both works in terms of how it is that you're going to market this movie and how this movie is going to make money for all involved, including the, you know, the studio and all that stuff. But I also think it kind of works within the film itself in terms of, again, what the aesthetic is going for and what kind of movie we're trying to make. You don't get someone like McG to direct this movie if you don't expect them to put an obnoxious amount of needle drops in it.
By my count, there are 39 songs on this soundtrack. That is like you're selling a quadruple disc CD. Even a thick CD from the CD era was like 15 tracks, maybe. So this is at least 3 CDs, which is nuts for a movie soundtrack. Like if you tried to put this on vinyl, what is that? 6 discs. So yeah. I mean, I knew it was a lot, but I hadn't counted them. But like they are good songs. Like the song selection is solid. You can tell it was picked by someone who has their background in music. And I think for a movie of this era, it doesn't necessarily give me issues because the needle drops they're not trying to do the work of placing you in a era of time. Like some movies will be like, oh, I'm going to look at top 40 type of songs from the 80s. So that way it's like this movie feels like the 80s, right? You know, you've got Motley Crue in here. You've got Wham. You've got Korn. You've got Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. Like the music spans from a lot of eras. So I like that the selections of the music at least line up with the attitude that is trying to be presented on screen versus sort of being this weird shorthand for like a time machine, right? And I have a friend who's a music supervisor who I'm getting lunch with this weekend. So I'm going to pick her brain and maybe I'll make her come on the show and be like, tell me about music supervision, right? Like what do we need to know as the audience that we don't know?
Yeah.
How expensive is licensing? The guy I talked to last night, he's like, oh yeah, all of the budget that I had for this short film just went to sound. So I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
All post-production work. Okay, well, let's take a look at the tail of the tape. This is where we find out why we're talking about this movie on this show. It's got an IMDb score of 5.7. Not too bad, I guess. Metacritic score of 52. Surprisingly, the Rotten Tomatoes critic scores is 68, but the audience scores are 45. Usually that's backwards.
Interesting.
It has a Letterboxd of 3.2, which is really solid on Letterboxd, honestly, and a Google users rating of 82% thumbs up. So that Google number really put us into plus territory. So this is officially a bubble pick here because it's got a 61.3 out of 100 bad movies we love total score. So right above the line that I usually like to look at 60. But guess what? My show. So I made room for movies in the 60 to 65 range and came up with a theme to support that. And it allows me to talk about movies like this that clearly have some negative reputation for being bad and also are beloved to some degree. And, you know, this is a movie that turned 25 last year, and I don't remember any kind of fanfare for this. in looking stuff up, I did pull a couple articles. One was from 2019, so it was like looking at it as it turned 20. I did find something on the 25th anniversary as well, but I don't remember this sort of having a big kind of like boutique label Blu-ray release. Like this is something that like Arrow or Vinegar Syndrome, probably Arrow, would release like a nice 4K cut of Charlie's Angels.
Yeah.
And so I was surprised to not see that. And then it kind of like made me begin to sort of contextualize why that might be the case. And so there's something I want to look at from a Vanity Fair article. Is written by Ashley Spencer, and this one was from the 2019 piece. It says, for all of its Y2K girl power messaging, Charlie's Angels is still a movie made mostly by men, with a male audience in mind. Depending on how you look at it, it shows a hellscape in which women are expected to look endlessly desirable, whether licking a steering wheel while wearing a race car tracksuit cut down to the navel, or bopping around in Spider-Man underwear and telling the delivery man to stick it in your slot. Or it champions a post-feminist dream where liberated women don't have to sacrifice their sexuality or blowouts to save the day. Maybe it's both.
That I feel like that was an interesting element of this movie, and trying to place where it is on the feminist scale.
Right.
And obviously no better two people to answer that question than us two dudes. Because like it is ostensibly like a girl power movie, but it's directed by a dude. A lot of like the characters themselves are kind of still sexualized in some uncomfortable ways. They are strong, badass women, but they are also very much so only in service of this Charlie figure. So it's a weird one to try to fully place in terms of where it falls on that scale. It doesn't feel like it's fully exploiting them, but it also doesn't feel like it is fully something that is like celebrating women, or because it's not made by and for women. So it was an interesting exercise to kind of try to place that. I still don't know where I would put this movie. I think it's overall fairly positive in that regard. But again, I don't know if I'm the right person to go to for that question.
Yeah, that's why I pulled that quote, because I found it interesting in the sense that it seems to sort of be like a man's idea of what post-feminist dream would look like. Like they all get to be sexy and badass and have all of that, right? And they all sort of like have their love interests that work out. So it's like they have the romance, they have the careers, they have the looks, like all of that kind of portrayed in a very like unrealistic light. And so I think like the unrealistic nature of the film is probably the thing that like drags it down the most. But again, this is like a celebration of the world not ending and getting to do a project like this. And, this isn't a movie that was like completely devoid of female input either. So it does walk an interesting line in where like the portrayals of women are not negative, but like you said, they are sort of overtly sexualized here and there. Even the villain to some degree, like Kelly Lynch, like they're all sexualized. And having just recently talked about Spice World, it's a movie directed by a man about this group of women that are very aware of their place in pop culture at the time. They're very aware of the fact that they are sexualized, but then also the Spice Girls have writing credits for the movie. Like they understand who they are and what they're doing and taking advantage of the moment. So I feel like, as weird as it might sound, like Spice World is probably like a stronger representation of self-aware feminism in a very male-centric sphere and how to take advantage of that, where this is like almost getting there, but falling a little bit short. But like Drew Barrymore, even on her show, said this movie is still very near and dear to her heart. She's still friends with Cameron Diaz and Lucy Liu. Like it was important to her at the time in her life, and still is. And they asked her in that segment on her show whether or not there was going to be a third movie, and her answer was interesting because part of what she said was, we almost did it, but because we were friends in real life and we had these relationships that we established, we didn't feel like we had to make a third movie just to be able to be in each other's lives anymore. And so that to me says that it was sort of a good experience for most of them, aside from like a particularly sort of mean instance where Bill Murray was fighting with Lucy Liu and they stood up for Lucy Liu. So I think some of the mechanics internally are different than what the movie ended up being. But on that same show, of the incident with Bill Murray, said an extremely profane argument between Bill Murray and Lucy Liu shut down filming for an entire day, with Murray allegedly saying, "I get why you're here," to Drew Barrymore, "and you've got talent," to Cameron Diaz, "but what in the hell are you doing here?" to Lucy Liu. "You can't act." So the remark was said to have been prompted at Liu to launch a physical attack on Murray, but later has been described as like script problems were the issue. And so in that moment, like Drew talking about it on her show really praised Lucy Liu for like not taking that shit from him, and good for her. I feel like Lucy Liu, despite what Bill Murray had to say, might actually be the best like actor in the film. Depends how you look at their career trajectories, because obviously Bill Murray's career, I think, has a lot more of those roles that are recognizable. But in terms of like what I like about acting, I feel like Lucy Liu is the truth. And that's why you and I, before we started recording here, I was like, I need more of her movies in my life. I need to do a whole deep dive into Lucy Liu's career.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have heard stories that Bill Murray can and has been kind of a nightmare on sets. And Lucy Liu is certainly not the first person to get into a screaming match with Bill Murray on set. So, I kind of get that. But going back to the Drew Barrymore part and what you're saying about the Spice World movie versus this movie, and this movie mostly being made by and for men, Drew Barrymore was a producer, maybe an executive producer on this.
It was.
And when you're thinking about where these three stars were in their careers at this point, like Drew Barrymore in 2000 was like pretty untouchable and had been for a while. Like she is a major player in Hollywood, had been for years. Obviously Cameron Diaz was huge, but she didn't really have the same kind of pull and sway that someone like Drew Barrymore had, and Lucy Liu was sort of an up and comer. So I do think that part of that, part of what works in this movie is because of Drew Barrymore's input on the producer side. And also it seems like by all accounts, McGee isn't like a terrible dude. Like there aren't stories about him being bad on set or anything like that. It seems like they mostly, you can get a sense that people were like having fun making this movie, that the three stars were having a good time. By all accounts, like weren't made uncomfortable or anything by things that he was doing. There haven't been any reports out there about him. And then to sort of take it back another step, you were talking about the resurgence in interest in the James Bond franchise, and like looking at these characters and how they're portrayed, it is kind of an inverse James Bond situation, right? They're three love interests. All of those men only exist to be love interests. You have Luke Wilson in this movie, and his only role is to be a dude who is trying to fall in love with Cameron Diaz.
Yeah.
But like they're James Bond is also kind of a sex symbol in his own way as a character, and having female characters who are sexy and sex symbols doesn't necessarily mean that we're sexualizing them. So I was curious, again, I feel like the worst person to try to answer this question, but I was curious to know like how a woman would read these characters and whether or not they feel like they're being sexualized, or if they're just people who are open in their sexuality and like being sexual beings and get to be sex symbols without necessarily being inappropriately sexualized by the camera or the story or whatever else it may be. I don't know where. I think everyone has a different place where, like, where they would put that line, but I don't know that this movie for me fully crosses that line.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, all of the love interests for the three of them are kind of like dorky dudes, right? Like Luke, I mean, he's a bartender, whatever, but
Yeah.
he's pretty like vanilla. Like Tom Green is the Chad and is like completely weird. But I mean, like he's dating Drew Barrymore in real life, so she was in Freddy Got Fingered briefly, so I get why he's there, and he's fun in the movie, but it's like all of the we get Matt LeBlanc as well as the love interest for Lucy Liu. He's just like he's kind of like a goofy actor. I don't know. He's playing like a version of Joey that's not quite as stupid as Joey was. So
Yeah.
between the three of them, like none of them are really chasing down. Like they're not put in a position where they're like, oh my God, they're so like desperate to have the approval of this man. Like, unfortunately, they are sort of wanting that from Charlie really bad. And like the necessity to like want to meet Charlie and and that aspect of the story, like you said, is just like this guy behind the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz. And I feel like if this movie was made now, so I do have to watch the 2019 version, but if this movie was made now, I sort of get the feeling that Charlie would be the villain. This voiceless man on the other side of the radio telling these women what to do and like sort of using them as pawns to affect global politics. Like maybe Charlie's the bad guy in the 2019 version, and Elizabeth Banks directed that. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely more interested in seeing that movie now than I ever was before. Because like I very vaguely remember the sequel to this movie, right? Like I saw it, but I just sort of was like, okay, it happened and moved on. It was still McGee. It was still the three of them. It still should have been solid, but was received even worse than this film. I'm sure it's probably still fun in a lot of the same ways. So I really probably have to do more homework here and to go back and take a look at that 2019 film. And I mean, that movie didn't get a sequel, so not entirely surprising with the sort of rise of kind of like incel movie bros that are very anti-woman in a lot of ways. So yeah. Okay, well, let's set the table. I know, I don't know how to move on from that. I don't have a segue. I don't have a good one. So, in June of 1998, it was reported that Charlie's Angels was one of a number of Aaron Spelling-produced TV series in development for a feature film adaptation, and by the following July, it was reported that the project was being developed at Sony Pictures. So, in February of 1999, Drew Barrymore was set to star and produce Charlie's Angels through her company, Flower Films. In April of that year, Cameron Diaz was announced to have joined the film as a co-lead before the role of Alex went to Lucy Liu. The film then opens November 3rd of 2000, earning $13.7 million on its opening day, debuting at the top of the box office. For its first weekend, the film grossed $40.1 million, dethroning Meet the Parents, which had stayed at number 1 for 4 weeks. So against a budget of $93 million, which seems like a ton, by the way, for this movie, Charlie's Angels grossed $125.3 million in North America and about $150 elsewhere for a worldwide gross of $264 million. Successful. It was the 12th highest grossing film of 2000. Yeah. And then Charlie's Angels was released on both VHS and DVD on March 27th, 2001, and on Blu-ray on August 3rd, 2010. A 2-disc Super Bit Deluxe DVD release premiered on May 27th of 2003, coinciding with the release of the sequel film, and it was then released on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray on October 22nd, 2019, probably in preparation for the 20th anniversary, which makes sense because the Vanity Fair article is also 2019. But the movie, I think, is, unabashedly a success. Makes, more than double its money back. But I want to circle back to that $93 million is a ton of money, I think, for this movie. I looked at the salaries. Cameron got 12, Drew got 9, Lucy Liu got 1. Obviously, the cast is still pretty big, and you have to pay some other people there, but you're looking at $22 million just for the 3 leads. Bill Murray, I'm sure, is not cheap in that equation. You're bringing in Crispin Glover, Sam Rockwell, who wasn't super famous at the time. You probably get all of them like on a budget contract kind of situation. And then I'm thinking like there's not a ton of huge VFX shots, but at the time in the 2000s, we've sort of, again, post Matrix, so everything kind of has to like look a certain way. There's a lot of slow-mo. There's a lot of pyro. I will say they really like to blow stuff up in this movie, and I mean, even the poster that you can see behind me, like there's a lot of fire, and that is very accurate. Everything blows up in this movie, and it's kind of awesome because you probably could have gone VFX fire for a lot of it. Granted, it wouldn't have looked great in the 2000s, but they really, I don't know if they built a model of an old castle or whatever that was that they detonated at the end of the film, but they really blew that up real good. And granted, like pyro's not that expensive, I think, in comparison to sort of what I've learned about VFX work, right? Like each one of those like scenes of rendering is like, you know, tens of thousands of dollars kind of thing. It starts to add up real quick. But do you feel like the $93 million is on screen in this movie?
Yeah, so we mentioned the three leads, and then obviously throwing in Bill Murray, who has to cost you a little bit. You've got a good amount of VFX and the pyro stuff that you're gonna be throwing money at. And then what we mentioned before, with this being an MTV movie and the absurd number of needle drops,
the licensing,
you're probably paying a good amount for licensing for some of those songs. So with all of that adding up, I'm sure the marketing for this was massive as well. With all that adding up, I can see this movie costing 93 to make. I don't know if we're doing the marketing budget separate from that 93 or if it's rolled into it, but for me it kind of checks out based on how big this movie looks, and considering sort of how you would have to pay for that, where you would have to spend that money in 2000 in order for a big action movie like this to look as big as it does.
Yeah, I think maybe just if you had told me in a vacuum, Charlie's Angels cost $93 million, I would have been like, that don't sound right. There's no way. Comparison here. Terminator 2 cost $94 million. It was the most expensive film ever at the time.
Okay.
So 8-9 years later.
There's a lot of explosion in that movie too.
There is. That's why I used it as a point of comparison. I was like, what's another movie where a lot of shit explodes? That's what I'm saying. Like pyro, maybe cheap, but yes, the licensing of the needle drops must have been insanely expensive. It's like, here's $22 million in cast, $50 million in licensing, and then we've got another $20 million or so where we can actually spend on VFX shots. Because like a lot of it's done practically. Like the wire work is done practically. Like most of the fighting is all like choreographed. You have stunt people in there taking some of the bumps. But like in terms of like complicated VFX shots, like I'm thinking of the window breaking, and then there's like a close-up explosion where you can't obviously blow your actors up, so you have to work around that. But like they really blew up a helicopter, it looked like, whether it's a miniature or not, like they blew something up. And then you do have the shot of like the fiery door falling on the camera, which I'm sure you don't want to like damage your camera equipment by just letting it sit there. But yeah, I feel like the licensing must have been insane. I'm trying to look up how much the soundtrack sold. Like, because if you made a lot of the money back on selling the soundtrack, then you probably like don't mind all of the needle drops. So at a glance, granted,
the economy of like what these movies cost versus what they were able to make back, not just in actual ticket sales, but everything around the movie, is just so different than what we're used to seeing now. So yeah, this movie made more than double its budget in global ticket sales alone, but with everything else, like CD sales, DVD sales, VHS sales, all of that stuff, whatever other marketing tie-ins there were, like they were probably pulling in a good amount of money. I wanted to look up another movie for reference in terms of budget, a movie that I think is kind of similar to this. It's funny as a companion piece. Mission Impossible 2, which also came out in 2000, cost $125 million to make. So they were around the same amount.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
So kind of checks out. You don't have the Dove budget in Charlie's Angels that you have in
True.
Mission Impossible 2 or the motorcycle budget, but comparable pricing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And it leans into its awareness of Mission Impossible existing, which is kind of cool as well. But the soundtrack sold over 2 million copies. And it looks like it was, for comparison, it was ranked 71st, though, in the best-selling albums for the year 2000. So top 100, awesome. But also kind of crazy that like something that sells 2 million copies is like, yeah, you're not even in the top 50 for the year at the time. But it looks like a vinyl is going between $12 and $92 according to Discogs, because you're paying for obviously a lot of vinyl. Yeah. I mean, granted, this is all like AI overview crap, so who knows? Could be completely incorrect on every front, but I see.
Well, just the idea of someone in 2026 being like, you know what my record player needs? The Charlie's Angels soundtrack. Like that's.
I mean,
God bless whoever is out there.
But yes, this is
buying this soundtrack on vinyl right now.
But it is certified platinum in Australia, New Zealand. It's certified silver in the UK and certified double platinum in the US. So, I mean, if you invested in the soundtrack for that reason, coming from a guy like McGee who knows the business, I think it was probably a good gambit to go heavy on the licensing there, because you probably made, what is that? How much was an album in 2000? 10, 15 bucks maybe. So you're looking at another like $20 million. Hey, look at that. $20-30 million. Yeah. If the vinyl is selling for 30-40 bucks, you probably made a good chunk of change back just on the soundtrack. And who knows if McGee, who knows what he did? How did he work that wizardry? I don't know. But we're going to work some wizardry of our own with the synopsis haiku. See that segue? That's much better.
Hell yeah.
Okay. Do you want to go first?
Yeah. I've got my that's why you're the best in the business. I've got my haiku ready to go. Should I jump in?
Let's hear it.
3 badass ladies fight crime for unseen boss man. Oh, hey, Bill Murray.
Oh, hey, Bill Murray. Trying to not get seduced by Kelly Lynch. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's mine. A trio of spies, beauty, brains, and brawn in sync. Let's blow some shit up.
Nice.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know if I can include any story stuff in here, but who needs who needs story with a movie like this? You know what Charlie's Angels are? They're spies. Look at the poster. Something's gonna explode. They're all looking good.
Yeah.
They're gonna kick some ass. What more could you ask for?
We're here for vibes, not story.
Oh yeah, this is a vibes movie all day long. And speaking of vibes, let's take a look back at that trailer from 2000 and see what kind of vibes they were selling us.
Cannot wait.
Before we get to the trailer, it is time for a quick commercial from the multiverse. Now, I'm sure we've all wanted to be someone else from time to time, even if it's just to get away for a while. Well, now you can, thanks to Bosley Skincare's hyper-realistic masks. Now you can enjoy all the luxury and positive benefits of high-end plastic surgery without the complications of the surgery and recovery. You get to pick your look, you lock it in, and within a few hours, the highly skilled makeup and prosthetic experts at Bosley will have you and your new face ready to face the town. And thanks to some creative licensing agreements, you can live out your famous fantasies in a mostly healthy way as LL Cool J, Sam Rockwell, Drew Barrymore, Cameron Diaz, Lucy Liu, Bill Murray, and more to come soon. So you're going to want to act now because summer's right around the corner and appointments are filling up fast. So check out Bosley Skincare's hyper-realistic face masks at a mall kiosk near you. And now, back to the show.
Another movie from an old TV show.
What are you gonna do?
Walk out.
They go where
LL Cool J was big at the time too.
Massive.
They do what no one else can. So when there's only one chance to get
And look,
it right,
you start the movie with a skydive stunt. Like,
they're the ones to call.
I like it a lot.
Damn, I hate to fly.
But they
The whole
only
opening is
answer
very Mission
to me.
Impossible.
Oh yeah,
My
very much
name
so.
is Charlie.
And so is like the vault heist scene.
Meet the most
Yeah.
elite crime-fighting force ever assembled. They've got techniques you never dreamed of.
You know, I signed that release waiver, so you can just feel free to stick things in my slot.
Good morning, angels.
Good morning, Charlie.
Meet Roger Corwin. He's planning to steal a new software that can trace a voice signal anywhere in the world.
If this got into the wrong hands, it'd be the end of privacy.
You know, this is all
That's where
very
you
like
come in,
Mission
Angels.
Impossible to.
Charlie, would that mean undercover?
I'll leave that up to you,
Yeah.
Bosley.
Although I never really watched Charlie's Angels to know like how international it got with the espionage.
Columbia Pictures presents
$1,000, the girl catches him.
But it's like helicopters, cars.
Yeah, there's some sexualizing the characters in the trailer.
Oh, for sure.
Hi, Pete. How are you?
I'm good. I just
Could you hold on a second? It's just been kind of crazy.
But again, if you're trying to get
Like
16-year-old boys in the theaters.
a virgin,
Yeah,
you know?
that was going to
I mean,
be
it's my
my
first time.
question. Was like,
Here.
as much as it is sort of like a girl power movie to some extent, it's also very much a like
I have to
movie
go.
for teenage boys. I mean,
Yeah.
Tom Green's in it, for crying out loud. And there you go.
When we talk about the most MTV aesthetic, Tom Green is the most synonymous with MTV in my mind.
Bill Murray.
I love fire.
This fall, get some action.
There are a lot of like flying bicycle kicks as well.
And that's kicking your...
You hit him with the Street Fighter, the Ryu Hurricane kick.
A lot of kicks.
A lot of kicks. I mean, look,
I'm sold.
yeah, whatever. Sometimes you just need to kick. It was interesting that they don't use guns in the movie. It was a choice that Drew Barrymore was very specific about. Like, we don't want to use guns. Like, the villains can have guns, but that's not what we want to do. We want to make this about us. So it's a very decided choice because it forces all of those fight scenes to be choreographed differently. I mean, the inclusion of the wire stuff, I think, might put a lot of people off because it sort of like feels out of place in the movie. Like, if you've watched, Hong Kong action stuff that uses wires, it sort of is not blended in the same sort of action environment. But I feel like at this time, wanting to incorporate that, being a fan of that is more than okay with me, I think, for this movie. It does lend itself to some stuff where it sort of like takes you out of the realism, but again, like, there's not a ton of realism to really sink your teeth into here. But I did find it interesting that, of all people to comment on this, Guillermo del Toro, while he was making Blade 2, said that while films like Charlie's Angels had helped to popularize the wire fu style of fight choreography in Western films, they also served as a nail in the coffin and prompted many filmmakers to want to get back to more hard-hitting action. He said, the moment you see Cameron Diaz flying in the air and you know that she is incapable of flying in the air and kicking 5 guys, you realize that is done using wires. I mean, Charlie's Angels was great, but its fighting style was almost satirical. And I'm like, look, GDT, I hear you to some extent, but when you're watching any sort of wire choreography, do you feel the same thing? Because like they trained a lot for this movie. They were training for 4 months, 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. So they all had to get in shape. They all had to learn the choreography. And I feel like for the most part, like they all like handle the physicality of the movie pretty well. And there's a lot of moments where I was sort of like looking for stunt doubles, and I was like, oh, that's not a stunt double. Okay, like they put in the work, and they worked with the team that did Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon to do the choreography and the wire work. So I would extend, I guess, the same commercial or the same question about the commerciality of this style to Guillermo del Toro. I'd be like, so when you're watching Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and a dude is backflipping 3 stories up to the balcony, like that didn't take you out of the reality, but Cameron Diaz flying through the air is what did it for you. Like, so I don't know if it's like the specific styles, because I know that a lot of the way that the wire work in stuff that I watched from like Hong Kong era cinema, like it's slightly heightened, where it's like, oh, the guy sort of jumps a little bit like unnaturally high, but it's not like a Jedi leap where, that dude's like jumping 25 feet in the air and spinning. So in this, I think a lot of the sort of wire stuff looks unnatural in a way that when he says satirical, I think he might be like unintentionally correct in a way that I feel like he's criticizing it for being almost satirical, when that might actually be the point of using the choreography in that style.
Yeah, I think the movie is way more borderline satirical,
Yeah,
self-aware than we give it credit for. This Guillermo del Toro quote is making me question a lot of his authority in terms of filmmaking. One, Guillermo del Toro giving us a lecture about realism when his entire vibe of filmmaking is within the realm of sci-fi and fantasy. He's someone who thrives within those worlds. I think that he understands more than anyone, or he should understand more than anyone, that film is an expressive art form, and we aren't necessarily always going there for a form of realism. So if the Charlie's Angels movie decides that it wants to display its action in a certain way using wire kung fu techniques, then it certainly can do that. And if it works within the context of the film and how it is that the film is presented to us, then we should fully appreciate that, as opposed to expecting a world of realism from a action comedy movie based on a TV show from the 60s and 70s. Like, that just seems like you're going to this movie for the wrong thing if that's what you're expecting out of it. Also, this movie is one that we've talked about coming on the heels of the popularity of The Matrix, which really introduced a lot of Western audiences to that style of kung fu action and wire action in Western cinema. This is a year after that movie came out. So the idea that Guillermo del Toro is saying that this represents this like insane shift in Hollywood for something that was only a trend for 18 months, and we needed to get back to using guns in movies, is like insane, when we have an entire 2 decades within the 80s and 90s of action movies that are about dudes with guns. And further to that point, The Matrix is seen as this inflection point of potentially influencing one of the most horrific things that we've ever seen, that has continued to be one of the most horrific things that we've ever seen, in Columbine and that shooting. And the fact that this movie was like, let's not glorify gun violence and instead do some cool stuff with wire kung fu action, when The Matrix is often pointed to as something that has like glorified guns and maybe contributed to the rise that we've seen in school shootings and other, gun violence in this country. Like, that should be something that we celebrate, and we should allow it to be something that we see in movies, whether it be Charlie's Angels or The Matrix or any Guillermo del Toro movie. Like, we don't need guns in this movie in order for it to be cool. It's like plenty cool to see Cameron Diaz and Lucy Liu do the work of figuring out, working with stunt coordinators and fight choreographers in order to land a really cool roundhouse kick or wire, kick or something on a bad guy. Like, that quote to me from GDT is like, he misses the mark on so many different levels.
Yeah, and I was like, I wasn't gonna like bring it in to drag him under the bus, but I'm like, look, he put his fucking name to this, not me, right? Like, I'm not the one that said this. And granted, like, I love Guillermo del Toro movies, and I actually like him as a creative plenty. I like his stance against AI. I like that he's like very interested in sort of miniatures and like authenticity, and even in Blade 2, okay, we're gonna get slightly sidetracked here, but it's important for this conversation. Like Blade 2, buddy, this is a vampire fighting like another infected super vampire. And I appreciate the fact that Wesley Snipes is a trained martial artist who you could then insert into this film and build fight choreography around and make it look tangible and realistic. Props to you for that. I love Wesley for that reason, right? That's why we watched him in all these movies, because he could do that. However, he'd been doing that his whole life. And to your point, this movie, Charlie's Angels, is very much aware of the kind of movie that it is. I mean, it starts with them making fun of TJ Hooker becoming a movie. Like, so they're aware of the fact that they are going to get teased for turning a TV franchise from that era into a movie. Then they jump out of a freaking airplane and Cameron Diaz, or excuse me, Drew Barrymore pulls off her LL Cool J skin. Like, the movie in the first 5 minutes is like, we are not here to take this overly serious. And so to then sort of burden the film with the notion that somehow their action cinematography is responsible for the death of this style that, like you said, had only been popularized in Western culture in maybe a couple years before. Crouching Tiger was like 98, and then Matrix.
Crouching Tiger was also 2000.
Was it?
Like,
there you go.
This is a very short window that we're talking about.
So it's like, yeah, the Matrix uses wire work too. It's just, yeah, do I believe that what's happening in the world of the Matrix is more cohesive with the world that exists in? Yeah, sure, but it's a fucking computer program in the movie where the dude can stop bullets and fly. So I just feel like it's such a weird thing to pin on this movie that it's like, oh, Cameron Diaz flying through the air, like she can't fly. Like, no fucking shit, Sherlock. That's so not the point. And for the movie to be as aware of it is of its placement, not just within like TV shows turned movies and within the spy genre, it's poking fun at itself. It's poking fun at other movies within the genre. I mean, we had just seen the resurgence of the James Bond franchise. Like GoldenEye was like mid 90s, 96 maybe. And then the more that those Pierce Brosnan movies went on, the cornier they got. So, like, this movie, like, to its credit, is well aware of its placement within this genre, and I think wants to have the most possible fun with it. And if that's Drew Barrymore throwing a hurricane kick on a bunch of guys and then like reverse Running Man out of the room that she's being held captive in, like, I don't really have a problem with it. The question of it, like, does it look in any way realistic, I think is a fair question. However, you cannot approach that question with like any actual authenticity unless the intention is to look realistic. And I think the more you watch the movie, the intent on things being like real is not what the focus of the movie is. Because if it was, like, you wouldn't include all of this stuff with Tom Green being like, I am the Chad. I am the Chad. Was the Chad good? Like, his whole persona in this is like, they're leaning very heavily on that. Sam Rockwell breaks into dance for some reason while smoking a cigarette, like, because Sam Rockwell likes dancing, so they show him dancing, right? Whether or not that matters to the realism of the world that is happening, like, is kind of irrelevant. So it is kind of a weird take from Del Toro to say that, and I think it's unfairly placed on this movie.
1000%. I don't want to get too much on my soapbox, but one of my least favorite fallback criticisms of movies that people have is that it's not realistic. And the whole point of movies is that they are artistic expressions. And if a movie decides that it wants to be presented as a form of realism, it can certainly do that. And we will base its success off of how well it's able to succeed in that particular realm. Like you said, this movie states within the first 30 seconds, within the first 5 minutes of this movie, it tells us what it is that we're going to be experiencing. And it never once communicates to us, this is going to be something that is realistic or should be read through the lens or the prism of realism. For some reason, when people say like Wes Anderson movies don't connect with me because that's not how people talk. Well, that's not how people are supposed to talk in Wes Anderson movies. They're not supposed to talk the way that you and I talk to each other in our day-to-day lives. And if you're expecting that from a Wes Anderson movie, then you're always going to be dissatisfied. And maybe it's up to you to meet the movie where it's at. Like, this movie communicates a very specific goal that it's trying to accomplish. And I think it does that. And it feels ridiculous to want like realistic gunplay out of the Charlie's Angels movie when that was never its intended purpose. Like, that communicates to me that you're kind of bad at watching movies, to be like a little blunt and a little mean, you know? And I'd hate to assign that assessment to Guillermo del Toro because he's someone who I respect both as a filmmaker and consumer of art. But in this instance, he is so unbelievably far off base.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. I don't want to hang on GDT too much, but I think we said enough about that. But you get something like Crispin Glover in this movie, right? And so like this, he wasn't written to be a silent character. He's just a kind of maniac. And so when he initially got the role, he was like, I don't like the lines. Can I not say them? And apparently they agreed to make it a non-speaking role to make him like more mysterious. But he apparently gave 3 pages of sheets on the psychology of the Thin Man to McG and was like, here's my notes for the guy I'm going to play. And like the scream and like the hair ripping and smelling was all him. And he's also like aggressively chain smoking throughout the movie. I'm like, damn. So like even within a movie that it's like, okay, let's adhere to like the rules of the movie. It's going to be fun. It's going to be action packed. You really can't trust what you're going to see, and we're going to have fun. And so if that is not apparent to you by the time that they land in the speedboat with Cameron Diaz in her bikini and Drew Barrymore dressed as LL Cool J, then yeah, like you're not going to be able to like probably catch up because like there's some sort of like barrier of entry there. And I want to get back to when like you're allowed to make movies that are fun that don't necessarily have to be comedies. And it's something that like Mission Impossible 2 was heavily criticized for at the time as well. And it's a movie I've covered on this show because of that reason, where it was sort of generally rated lower than the rest of the franchise. But it's one that I remember quite a bit because, again, John Woo. So you're bringing a lot of that like Hong Kong stylized action to it. And as ridiculous as that movie often is, it has its charms. And what I learned is that there's a lot of people that really love Mission Impossible 2 and don't look at it as if it's a bad movie. And actually, they think it's their favorite of the franchise. So, you know, you just, like you said, you have to kind of meet the movie where it is. And if you don't, you're always going to be disappointed. Like, I know it's easier said than done, but not going into a movie with expectations is kind of like the best way to go about things. I mean, we're seeing it right now with The Bride. Again, don't want to get sidetracked into a whole nother discussion about that because I could write a book on what's happening with that movie right now, but we're not going to. I'm going to cover that at the end of the week with a couple of filmmakers who volunteered to talk about The Bride. So that's going to be an interesting discussion with them.
Love it.
But do you want to do some trivia right now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Time for trivia.
Okay, so there are a couple of moments in the film, at least one that I can recall pretty clearly, where The angels speak a secret language that seemingly only the three of them actually speak. Do you know what language that is?
Okay, this is cheating because I watch every movie with subtitles, and the subtitles told me what language they were speaking in.
That's whatever. You didn't
It's
cheat.
Finnish.
There you go. The subtitles cheated for you. Yes, you're correct. They said what I read was that it's like not pronounced all that well, but it is Finnish. And I was like, I don't know what that is. And I'm curious in that scene too, if Alex, what's his name? Alex Knox? No. Rick Knox?
Eric Knox?
Eric Knox, whatever. Sam Rockwell. He looks at them as if he sort of understands what they're saying, but doesn't let that on. And I don't know if that actually is the case, but maybe. I mean, he's a supervillain kind of guy, so quite possibly. Okay.
Yeah. Everyone speaks Finnish.
Right. So which actress was initially lined up to play the role of Alex before Lucy Liu signed on?
Okay, I don't know the actual answer, so I'm going to take you through my thought process.
All
right,
right.
we're trying to think of someone who was a big star in the late 2000s who is a brunette. I think we want to say someone on the younger side. She's a little bit younger than Cameron Diaz and Drew Barrymore. I want to say my brain is going to Courtney Cox, but she already had the Scream franchise, so she didn't need something outside of that and Friends. Who else was big? I want to say like a Jennifer Love Hewitt. Is she a thing? It was like pre Jessica Alba, Jessica Biel. So I'm gonna go with Jennifer Love Hewitt. That feels like a bad guess, but that's my final answer.
I mean, it's a fine guess. The answer I was looking for, however, was Thandie Newton. Speaking of Mission Impossible 2, she revealed that the reason why she rejected the part of one of the angels because she felt that the role was too objectified, pointing and said that her character was going to be introduced with a close-up of her butt in tight denim. She also quit as a result of a meeting with the Sony Pictures exec at the time, Amy Pascal, where she told Newton that no one would buy a black woman as being college-educated, even though Newton herself studied at Cambridge and tried to turn her character into a stereotypical black woman. So I think she was right to walk away from the project.
No one would believe that you went to Cambridge,
right? Super insulting, and she gets to play sort of like in the same sandbox in what she's doing in Mission Impossible 2 and do it in a way that is significantly less objectifying. Granted, she's in the middle of a love triangle in that movie as well, so a little bit, but again, movie made by a man. Can't quite figure it out, fellas.
So they really needed the third angel to be non-white. They were like,
yes. It seems like what the case. They were like,
we got her to.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, Lucy Liu was in a position where she wasn't a huge star at the time, so I'm not really surprised that she took the role. But it was Drew Barrymore who had to convince Cameron Diaz to take the movie, and actually, she was like, "Look, I'll pay you $12 million." So Cameron Diaz had turned it down a couple of times, and so finally, Drew got on the phone with her and was like, "Come on, do this. I'll pay you more than I'm paying myself." And so she finally signed on. They also tried to recruit Angelina Jolie for that role of Alex, and there was a couple other people that were rumored to be in contention as well. I had it somewhere, and if I don't see it, oh yes, Nia Long passed on this film to do Big Mama's House. Or that was the rumor. That was the rumor.
Nia Long would have been interesting.
Yeah, she said that she wasn't ultimately cast because the producer said she looked too sophisticated and too old next to Drew Barrymore, and so that's why they cast Lucy Liu. But Mila Jovovich, Alyssa Milano, and Julia Roberts were among the many actresses who were frontrunners for the parts of the. So, whatever. We ended with Lucy Liu. I'm happy with it because it gives Lucy Liu kind of a more of a breakout performance and puts her on the map in a way that she wasn't before. So I'm happy with that. Okay, third and final question.
It's a good trio.
It is a good trio, I think. And they're all still friends, so I think it speaks to that. Question 3. Who bought the rights to Charlie's Angels prior to the film?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
who bought the screen rights to Charlie's Angels before this movie was filmed?
Who bought this rights? Like, are we talking like a studio?
It's a
Or
person that's involved in the movie. She might have produced it too.
okay. I mean, you just gave it. I was gonna say Drew Barrymore.
That is right. It was Drew Barrymore. So it's rumored that she earned close to $40 million for this movie, and rumored to be up to $80 million for the second movie. So her investment in buying the rights to Charlie's Angels seems to have paid off quite handsomely for Drew Barrymore. And yeah, she, like, her production studio was involved. She was very heavily involved in sort of like all the creative aspects of it. When the decision came from Crispin Glover to do his weird shit, he had to go to Drew Barrymore and McGee and get it approved. And you know, this script was also kind of all over the place. They said it was rewritten 30 times until it was deemed acceptable by the producers and McGee. So, you know, that's a lot of rewrites for a movie like this, especially when, you know, it's a little bit half serious at best. So it's kind of interesting that both the producers and the director would turn down so many versions of the script before finally deciding on something, because you have like the history of the show to pull from. I mean, they shot some stuff in the sort of like intro crawl where they're showing like scenes of the girls like before they became the Angels, and you see one of them like tied, they're chained together as prisoners, and that's like tied to directly from an episode of the show. So I think similar to probably Mission Impossible, where it's like, okay, how do we take like a show idea and then like build it out into a full movie and make it seem serious enough? And I think that part of this movie is handled kind of well, because it seems like this broad Mission Impossible thing of like, oh, this company is trying to steal our data and they're trying to like basically surveil everybody with voice identification. And it's like, oh, that seems big and scary and probably not good for the world. And then really it's kind of like this petty vendetta from Sam Rockwell trying to kill this guy who he's wrongfully pegged as his father's murderer. So I like that it undoes the notion of why we would take it seriously in the first place, because again, the movie knows what it's doing. So if you if you don't know what the movie is doing, then maybe just watch it again. Give it another chance.
It's nice that the movie's aware that it doesn't need to be taken that seriously, and it's also like, again, because it falls in this sweet spot between the Y2K scare and post 9/11 anxieties, where it seems like, at least in America, everything is still kind of peachy. So the bad guy not actually being bent on total world domination actually kind of fits for where we were as a country at the time. You know, like we were, again, in that sweet spot where, for the most part, most Americans could kind of agree, yeah, things are pretty chill right now.
Yeah,
like,
I feel like
the sky is not fully falling.
Yeah, I feel like I want to go back and look at like all the movies that came out in 2000 and be like, what was going on in this year? Wasn't Gladiator 2000?
Gladiators 2000. You said Meet the Parents 2000.
Yeah.
Crouching Tigers 2000. Yeah, there's not a lot of, obviously, right, in 1999, you get a lot of movies where people are like, shit is terrifying. The Matrix, Fight Club, Office Space, even like American Beauty. All these movies are like pretty terrified about what is to come in the new millennium. And then in 2000, I think, do we get Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, or is that 2001? But that might be pre 9/11 2001. So in 2000, you're getting this sort of, everything is peachy, like it's a continuation of like 1997, 1998. Things are chill. And then after 2001, obviously, we were like, wow, the sky is totally falling. And now every movie in 2026 is about how the sky is falling. So,
yeah, well, you know, You kind of got to roll with the
Yeah.
times, you know.
Can't blame him.
All right, well, let's head over to the bonus wheel. Ooh. We will spin it and see what questions come off the board. I've added some questions, I think, since the last time you were here, so you may or may not get one of those questions. One of them is what song should be on the soundtrack, but I think that's an unfair question for this movie because they already got 40 songs on the soundtrack, so I hope we don't pull that one out of the hat. And at least you don't have to start with that one. So you have to sell the movie on a single scene. So what is the scene that makes this movie?
The scene that I would sell this movie on is still, for me, the opening scene. It's, again, really in conversation with Mission Impossible 2, which also starts with a scene on an airplane. Also talking about all the anxieties and where this movie fits in the timeline. Interesting that both those movies start on planes. But that opening scene really, and it's pretty much the entire thing is in the trailer. It tells you everything that you need to know about this movie. It's going to be fun. It's going to be self-aware. It's going to be kind of sexy. It's going to be cool. There's going to be explosions. There's going to be a cool needle drop. You might get a cool cameo from LL Cool J or someone like that. It's going to feel like MTV, but it's also going to feel like a big cinematic experience of something that you need to see on the big screen, which wasn't necessarily a concern in 2000, the same way that it is a concern in 2026. But I think that scene does really give you everything that you need to know in order to understand why you would or would not enjoy this movie. I would still lean towards would enjoy the movie, but it's all in that opening scene.
Yeah, when LL Cool J pulls the hatch on that plane, wouldn't a bomb going off also just blow a hole in the side of the plane and depressurize everything? Like, didn't you just do kind of the same thing? I guess like the explosion would have killed some people, of course, but you know, lesser of two evils in that situation. But like disarming the bomb wasn't part of the equation. It's like this bomb is going to explode one way or another. Okay, so what is an item, object, or piece of technology from the film that you would want to have for yourself?
Ooh.
Hyper realistic LL Cool J mask.
That feels too Mission Impossible coded.
Yeah, very much so.
I don't want the big technology. Honestly, okay, the technology that I would want from this phone or from this movie, a little slip there. One of those little brick Nokia phones that they use. Wasn't that a quaint time in telecommunications where we could call each other on the go, but we didn't have a full computer in our pocket? You could play Snake, and that was about it. And make a phone call.
No
maybe
doom
text
scrolling
someone,
on my Nokia.
C, the letter C, the letter U, and then later. Yeah. Yeah, no doom scrolling on those phones whatsoever.
T9 texting. That's the classic. Kids, you won't know that. You had to push the button 3 times to get to the letter. I could do that while I was driving. You know, that's how ingrained in our systems that sort of style was. But skilled, very skilled. Yeah, I mean, I guess I do like Drew's Mustang. So if I had to take something away from it, I'd be like, you know, always would be nice to have a classic muscle car, white with the red stripes. Very nice. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give you one more off the board since it's been a while since you've been here. Okay. Oh, this is a fun one. If it stays, nope, we got a different one. Okay, so pick one character from the movie and tell me what they would be posting on social media the morning after the events of the film.
Okay, I think the biggest poster would be Bosley, and he would be an aggressive Instagram story poster from their vacation. Obviously, we know that he has one too many Buddha drinks, so he's a little tipsy. He's maybe sliding into DMs, you know, in his little in his villa at the beach. But he's posting. He's not even talking about how crazy everything is, that he almost died. He's just posting sunset pics from the beach, pictures of his little Buddha drinks, maybe a selfie of him with the girls. All good vibes. He's probably doing his legs and a funny hot dogs or legs picture. Bosley's giving you good content after after the events of this movie.
I like that. And I mean, you got the tropical vacation environment for them too. So I mean, should do well on the socials. All right, cool. Well, we'll leave the wheel behind, and we'll go to more or less. So you're just going to tell me something that you want more of from the film and something that you want less of.
Something I want more of from this movie is dancing. In particular, I want more Sam Rockwell dancing because he's a great dancer, and it's always fun to see him having fun dancing. But I also think there should be more Cameron Diaz dancing because she is hilarious. The scene where they go to Soul Train and she's dancing to Baby Got Back is one of the funniest scenes I've ever seen, unironically. I was actually laughing out loud from the moment that she starts dancing. It ultimately ends up being played for laughs, but that scene is hysterical. Like, Cameron Diaz is a very funny physical actor, so we could have used a little bit more of that. It would have been good for the movie.
Yeah, it's interesting because she is a classically trained dancer. And so she knows how to dance, but then also, like you said, she's a good physical comedian and she knows how to sort of play that for laughs. And in watching that scene, I was like holding my breath there for a second because I'm like, this is getting awkward. Okay, so the white girl is the only one on stage dancing at Soul Train. It's not going so well for her. And at first you see like the crowd vibing and everything seems fine. And then it kind of like cuts to crickets and we see that the crowd is all very shocked by what they're seeing. And then she begins to sort of still win them over somehow. So it's like it comes in like this weird cyclical wave where it understands like the setup, the punchline, the joke. You pause for sort of like the awkward laughter. And then at the end of the day, it's like, well, we're still here to have fun. So like everybody jump back in and have fun. And for a moment, I was like, oh boy, this is going to veer off into some territory that I don't know that this movie has the dialogue or the vocabulary to actually tackle here. I mean, we see Thandie Newton walked away from it because she was like, yeah, I don't want to be pigeonholed into being like the black girl in this and only that. Lucy Liu. She's not really sort of categorized as like the Asian girl, but it's like, okay, well, we're infiltrating like an Asian massage parlor. So obviously like that's going to be your job. And then like the other two show up. Yeah, there are some very borderline scenes that sort of are very like 2000s era of like, we're not quite sure how to handle this. We think that this is like funny because Asian plus Asian in this environment equals laughter. And so a little bit of the math on that like doesn't feel like it adds up quite as well. And so by the time they get to the Cameron Diaz scene, you got to look at it from both sides where like if you're in the audience and you're the black audience there to watch Soul Train, you're like, what the fuck is this? And we get that, right? And then if you're also Cameron Diaz, she's like, I sort of unironically and genuinely love Soul Train and I really want to do this. And I sort of like, okay, I look stupid, but I'm having a good time. So I think it understands the assignment there in that it is doing both things. But yeah, I was like, oh boy, I don't remember how this was handled. And then you've got Luke Wilson talking to like the two bouncers who are like very, very serious the whole time. And like, your white girl shouldn't be up there stealing the show, even though they went up to her and be like, do you want to dance on stage? So
you want to go up? Yeah.
Very, very precarious there in some moments, but ultimately I think willing to have a good time and a good sense of humor about itself. So what was the thing that you wanted less of?
Yeah, this might be a hot take, but I never got on board with Tom Green. I never found his shtick funny. He was, again, the most synonymous with MTV humor at the turn of the century. Like, I associate MTV with Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, and Tom Green making fun of those bands. But he doesn't do it for me. I don't find his brand of comedy ever to be funny. I find him kind of insufferable whenever he shows up. So it wasn't working for me. I could use a lot less Tom Green in this particular movie.
Not a fan of the Chad.
No, not a fan of the Chad.
The Chad was not working for you. I mean, that's fair. I think I eventually came around on Tom Green because I saw him do stand-up comedy. And I feel like as a stand-up comedian, he's a good comic. And then he's sort of like in character when he's doing what we see of him most of the time. So it's like he's taking his comedy, then building a character, and then playing that character versus sort of like him just being himself and being funny. But he's a very good stand-up comic. All right, let's go to Critics Corner. We said too many nice things about this movie. And,
yeah,
so we have to
Someone
go.
needs to bash it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure there are people because there always are. Let's see. We've got a 52 Metascore overall. And we start with a 25 on the board. San Francisco Chronicle. It's Mick LaSalle. He just says it's an utter debacle. He didn't like it. Sorry, Mick. What are you going to say?
Utter debacle.
Utter debacle. What are you, Jim Ross, watching a WWE pay-per-view? It's a slobber knocker.
That feels like a bit of an exaggeration. It feels a bit dramatic, Mick.
Yeah, because I think by all accounts, like, it's pretty well liked by the general public. It was successful. So where does like the debacle part come in, right? Because I think objectively as a critic, granted, this is probably not being written like with the benefit of seeing the returns and everything. You have to understand that the movie is sort of trying to like thread a very fine needle in the spy and espionage action genre. And it has to go crazier and funnier than Mission Impossible. And it sort of has to go like sexier than Bond. And I think in trying to do those two things, like when you look at James Bond, especially, he's kind of like a womanizer, right? So he never really comes across as like this character that actually cares about the women in his life. Most of them die, and then throughout the course of the 30 films or whatever, it's always a different woman. I think up until the most recent franchise was the only time that there was ever like carryover female in a Bond film. And it took getting to the point of like the 2010s to be like, oh yeah, like he should probably not be that. And I saw an interview with Christian Bale where he turned down, like they asked him if he would ever be interested in doing that. And he basically was like, that character is like, there's too many character traits of the character that like, I'm not interested in playing. And so I'm like, hey, yeah, credit to Bale. Like put a microphone in front of him and I'll always say something that I want to hear. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go to LA Weekly. They gave it a 30 out of 100. This is Manola Dargis says, of course, it's terrible, but did it have to be this bad? So why the of course? Seems like you went in already knowing what you were going to say.
Yeah, I think this kind of speaks to a interesting aspect of film criticism where we are sort of expecting everything. Again, it's all about expectations, where we're expecting everything to be a certain caliber of movie, right? You want everything to be PTA. You want everything to be Stanley Kubrick, and you want everything to be something that's vying for Oscars. But not every movie is going to be that. Sometimes a movie needs to be for 16, 17-year-old kids who like to watch MTV, but also need to kill 3 hours at the mall on a Saturday when their parents drop them off. And Charlie's Angels is just that movie. So, yes, we can go into Charlie's Angels thinking it won't be the cinematic delight that, again, a PTA movie is going to be. There aren't going to be camera movements that make you rethink how it is that we place cameras. There aren't going to be edits that make you question the entirety of your existence on this planet. But it will be effective in communicating what it's trying to communicate. And if you can allow the movie to be that, then no, of course it won't be bad. But if you are expecting that from every movie, then yes, this movie is never going to quite reach those heights.
Yeah. You got to sort of give it some grace. But anyway, let's go up the board. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 50s on the board. So I'll let you pick 2 of those because we got Christian Science Monitor, LA Times, Village Voice, and the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Ooh, we got 2?
Get 2.
Okay. My New York bias wants to say Village Voice. I'm also intrigued to hear what the LA Times has to say, but I'm kind of intrigued by this. What is it? Christian Quarterly
Science Monitor.
or something. I kind of want to hear what the Christian Scientists have to say about it. Give me the Christian Scientists and LA Times.
Okay. So the LA Times is Kenneth Turan, who's been a critic here for a long time, says a potato chip of a movie. Tasty and lightweight. It's fine for a cinematic snack if that's what you're looking for. Making it an entire meal, however, really isn't advisable. I think that's fair. I like potato chips. And you know what? Sometimes I'll eat a whole fucking bag of chips and I'll feel like a fat ass afterwards, but I will have enjoyed eating that bag of chips as my dinner. So, yeah, I don't think that's a horrible analogy, honestly.
Not a terrible analogy. We'll take it.
All right, so let's
allow it.
Yeah, let's take a look at the Christian Science Monitor. This is David Starrett. It says, too bad the action scenes rarely rise above standard kung fu comedy, diluting the film's otherwise considerable entertainment value. Okay, so he just didn't like the kung fu.
Okay. I think it's fine. I think it's serviceable. I think it works within the context of the movie. Yeah, it doesn't blow you away in the way that something like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon would. So maybe this particular reviewer has a wide and deep knowledge of, like Wire Hong Kong films from the 70s and 80s, and that's why they're not that impressed by this, which I totally understand. But I think the action sequences in this movie are good enough to like be enjoyable.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it earlier when you said it's very kick heavy. Like that is probably the thing. Like a lot of the fights boil down to kicks, but realistically, I mean, these girls are wearing heels and stuff, and a kick is probably the most high velocity strike you can throw. So it makes sense. Like maybe they don't want to see it. You want more punching. You want more karate chops. I don't fucking know. All right. Miami Herald's on the board with a 63. This is Renee Rodriguez. Says the most charming bad movie ever spun off a hit TV show.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know too many other TV show movies besides Mission Impossible and that series. There was a Get Smart.
Get Smart.
That was based off a TV show.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there are a few. But yeah, this is,
Green Hornet too, I think, right?
Of the ones that are bad, most enjoyable. Yeah, because I think we would consider the first Mission Impossible movie to be a good movie. So that's kind of a different category than where we're placing Charlie's Angels.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, we've got the New York Daily News and Boston Globe both in with 75s. You want to go back to your New York bias for this one?
Nah, let's go to Boston.
Oh, Boston. Jay Carr says, a babe-a-thon. Pure and simple. Well, he liked the babes, so he gave it 3 out of 4.
Jay was in the theater super horny.
Yeah. He's like, look, I brought my libido for this one. Well, when we did Debs at the beginning of the month, we were like, don't bring your libido to this movie. It's not for the male gaze. This movie, as Jay Carr points out, is probably more for the male gaze than Debs. Okay. Well, let's go to the Washington Post. We will close it out with Desmond Thompson. Very short, very sweet. Says the gals are fab, and so's the movie.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we haven't really talked about too much, but I think it's important to note is that all 3 of the stars are really cool. Like Drew Barrymore is dripping swag in this movie. Cameron Diaz is an amazing screen presence, and Lucy Liu is a very, very cool actor and like very solid within this role. The 3 of them have great, funny chemistry with each other. You can tell that they are like friendly, off camera. So, if you just go to the movie and you're looking for star power, you get it from the 3 leads.
Yeah, they're all great, honestly. It's fun watching them have fun. And, you know, at this point in her career too, Drew Barrymore is kind of like been in the rom-com stuff. She's been in the tearjerker stuff. So to see her kind of like putting all of that stuff on the table, and then also kind of being a little bit more punk rock and a little bit more aggressive throughout the film is pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, I think Lucy Liu is the truth, and I want to see more of her stuff. I don't know if you've seen The Counselor, but I've been sort of unable to revisit any Cameron Diaz role since then. There is a scene in it that I won't even describe here, but if you watch the movie, you will never forget what I'm talking about. And it's like she's good in the movie, but that scene, I'm just like, I can't not think of that scene because it's so graphic that I can't. And
I haven't seen it.
It's been interesting to like go back and see this and The Mask and look at some of her like early work where she's like such a good comedic actress and almost like a female Jim Carrey a little bit in a way that's like she's got a very expressive face. She sort of likes to dance. She likes the physicality of the role. She's got really good comedic timing. And sort of look back on her career and see that. And then like The Counselor is such a pendulum swing in the other direction for her. And I just recently did The Holiday also for Rom-Comathon. So it's like seeing her in her sort of, not, I'm going to say natural habitat, or at least like where she sort of came up in the business, like being this comedic presence is really cool.
Yeah. Seeing her within her wheelhouse
exactly.
for sure.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
And to channel my inner Jay for just a brief moment, they are three of the most beautiful women of all time. And like part of watching movies is like, it's nice to see beautiful people on the big screen. So whether it be Drew Barrymore, Cameron Diaz, and Lucy Liu, or the new Glenn Powell movie, like it's always just nice to see someone with a beautiful face on your screen.
I mean, look, it is Hollywood, and you're probably gonna like if you're gonna make a Charlie's Angels movie, you have to go big because the TV show, you know, had the reputation with those actresses for being that. So I like it. And yes, they're all, you know, looking fantastic. Of course, they're all having a lot of fun. The outfits are great, and they work their asses off for this movie. So I mean, like, give them credit.
Yeah.
All right.
That's why we're doing podcasts.
Yeah.
And doing podcasting stuff and not in movies because, you know, okay voices, but people don't want to see our faces on the big screen.
No, not on the big screen. Maybe on a small screen, but not a big one. Let's take a look at the gateway drug movies. Because I want to know what is a movie that you would suggest people watch if they're trying to decide on whether or not to push play on Charlie's Angels. What is something that's in the ballpark that might help them get over the hump?
Yeah, I think we've mentioned. I'm gonna say two movies, and we've mentioned both of them. I think The Matrix. This movie is really informed by the success of that movie, understandably. And I know that you said that you've had an episode about it. I still think it's a good movie. I will die on that hill, but Mission Impossible 2. I think that the two movies are very much so in conversation with each other. It's interesting that they came out in the same year. I think part of the reason why there wasn't as much blowback towards Charlie's Angels and therefore not as much of a reclaiming of this movie in the last 10 to 15 years is because of the reaction to Mission Impossible 2. But the two movies do feel very, very, very similar in terms of what it is that they're trying to accomplish, being based off of TV shows, being self-aware, and having some fun within a genre that like doesn't need to take itself all that seriously. So those would be the two that I would say.
Good choices. I think for me, I would say not GoldenEye, but the other two, which was Die Another Day and Tomorrow Never Dies. The two additional Pierce Brosnan Bonds are much more sort of goofy than GoldenEye. And I mean, you get Halle Berry and you get Denise Richards in those films as well. So it's like there is a focus on these beautiful women being larger parts of the overall story. And yeah, those movies do get kind of goofy. So if you're willing to have fun, I mean, I know he's like driving a tank around in one of them and it's just like very casual. You know, he's just in a suit and tie, like, oh, it's tank time. So yeah, I would go with either of those are probably good choices.
I don't like those movies.
That's fair. I liked them decreasingly as he stayed. I liked him as Bond, but GoldenEye is my favorite of his era of Bond.
Yeah, I got to check out the rest of them, but I'm not a Bond guy. Give me Charlie's Angels over Bond movies in general any day of the week. I think that's my
I am not a huge Bond guy.
Not my hottest take, but
as
a franchise.
I mean, I'm not a big Bond guy either, to be honest. I liked Pierce Brosnan, and my mom liked Pierce Brosnan. So that's how I saw GoldenEye. And then, of course, the video game made it super accessible and sort of like made me a fan on two fronts. And like, I never even saw the finale of the Craig Bond series. You know, it's like 3 hours long. And I was just like, I think I watched the first 3.
That movie sucks.
I watched the first 3 with Daniel Craig, and then I was like, I think I've had enough. I was like, what else is going to happen in these movies that hasn't already happened? So, look, I'm probably overgeneralizing here, and I will get to them one day. I like Daniel Craig, but yeah, I need to be in the mood to sit through like 7 hours of James Bond.
Yeah, when realism goes wrong. Give me Drew Barrymore hurricane kicks over James Bond realism with Daniel Craig any day of the week.
Yeah, more hurricane kick, please. Okay. Well, I want to give you the opportunity to plug whatever you want to plug while you're still here.
Yeah, thank you. Well, if folks are interested in checking out my writing, that's all available on screenagewasteland.com. But not just myself. There's a ton of other great folks there who are doing various reviews and listicles and all sorts of other fun things. So it's a fun community over there. If you're looking for a place to get some movie news and reviews and all that other good stuff, you can also check out things that I'm doing there. I've got the Canon podcast that's through Screen Age Wasteland. So that's on any podcasting platform that you might be listening to us on right now, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Amazon, all that good stuff. And you can also check me and other Screen Age Wasteland folks out on our YouTube page, youtube.com/@ScreenAgeWasteland. So you can check out episodes of the Canon there, as well as some other video-only series that I pop up on from time to time, as well as our other contributors there. And if anyone is interested in following me on any social media platforms, I'm on Letterboxd, Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all the same handle, @RafStit. It's all one word, RAFSTITT, but posting various movie and non-movie related things on all of those various platforms. I'm all around. If folks want to find me, I'm there.
Easy to find. And yes, I've been on your show before. We had a great time talking about Titan, and I will be back. We're going to do Clockwork Orange, and I've got a lot to say about that because I've read the book. My wife bought me a first edition of Clockwork Orange as well that is currently in storage with all my other books. So I need to see if I can like get it out and reread it beforehand. But I'll tell you some specific stories about reading the book and connecting it to the movie when we record for your show.
Sweet. I can't wait.
It's going to be fun. Well, thank you for this. I'm glad that we were able to figure out a time and date to make it work on short notice. And, I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Yeah, man. Can't wait to chat again. Thanks for having me on. This was, as always, an absolute blast. Can't wait to have you on the Canon, and hopefully I will be back on Bad Movies We Love at some point in the future. But thanks again for having me.
You know you will. Thanks to Raph for coming back on the show and re-examining Charlie's Angels at 26 with me. It's a movie that I always had fun with at the time, but I wasn't 100% sure that, looking back, it was going to go so well. So I'm actually really happy that it did. And speaking of being happy and having fun, if you want to have even more fun, make sure you check out the Canon podcast. It's part of Screen Age Wasteland. And you can find Raph talking about all kinds of movies that are getting inducted into the official film canon. I was there before for Titan, and I will be back for Clockwork Orange, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. But check the show notes for easy access links to the canon. And speaking of the show notes, while you're there, check out the rest of the Scheist Podcast Network, which includes Hers, His, and Ours, Ex-Friends, the original Scheist Podcast, and Kunked, a comedy podcast dedicated to Philomena Kunk. And in the show notes, you will also find the listener survey where you can give me a piece of your mind, and it's completely anonymous. And of course, thank you to everyone who took the time to listen to not just this episode, but the entire show. The podcast options are plentiful, so the fact that you took the time to listen to this show and to trust me with that time means a lot to me, and I appreciate it. So until next time, stay good, be good, do good, all that. Watch movies. Take care, everybody.